Why do I keep feeling this way? Episode Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion. Welcome to Why Do I Keep Feeling This Way? Today we're going deep on something called Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion, a map of the 8 core feelings every human experiences and how they combine into everything else you feel. If you've ever felt something you couldn't name or found yourself in the same emotional loop on repeat, this one is for you. You absolutely know the experience. You're just in the middle of a perfectly ordinary day and suddenly, bam, you're hit with a feeling that just seems way too big, too tangled, or honestly just far too familiar to explain. Like maybe a text gets left on read, or a minor plan falls through and you are plunged into this outsized emotional reaction. You try to tell yourself to just rationalize it, but it just loops and you simply cannot think your way out of it. Section 1. The tangled emotional loop. Now, right off the bat, we need to completely shift how we view ourselves here. That chaotic feeling you get, it wasn't random, and it definitely was not a character flaw or some dramatic overreaction. It was actually your biology. It's literally your nervous system doing exactly what it's built to do, pulling from a deeply organized internal system. Section 2. Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion. To really understand this internal system, we have to look at a framework created in the 1980s by a psychologist named Robert Plutchik. And the sheer scale of his findings is just fascinating. Get this, Plutchik estimated that we humans are capable of experiencing something like 34,000 distinct emotional states. That's enough to make anyone's head spin. But here is the amazing part. He found that every single one of those messy, complex things we feel actually stems from just 8 primary biological roots. He took those 8 roots and arranged them into a wheel. And the structural elegance of this is just, it's beautiful. Basically, every emotion has a direct, biological opposite sitting straight across from it. Joy opposes sadness. Trust faces disgust. Fear counters anger. Anticipation opposes surprise. Seeing it laid out like this brings this incredibly calming sense of order to what, let's be honest, usually feels like pure emotional chaos. Section 3. The 8 core feelings. Let's step away from the dry textbook definitions for a second and look at how these actually feel in real human moments. First up, we have the connectors, showing up in these nice, cool tones. Joy isn't just smiling or happiness. It's the physical, felt sense of connection and safety in your body. But if you grew up feeling like joy had to be earned, you might chase it through performance, staying constantly busy so you feel worthy of it. Then there's trust. Trust is what makes connections safe. It's letting your guard down without bracing for rejection. But if your trust was broken early on, your nervous system absolutely remembers that. It starts treating closeness as a literal threat, which looks like keeping people at arm's length even when you really, genuinely want them close. Next, we have the protectors. Fear is a deeply wired survival mechanism, but the tricky thing is, our nervous systems don't always know the difference between an actual physical threat and something our mind is just worried about. So fear often shows up as avoidance disguised as caution, like that agonizing hesitation before hitting send on a message. Then there's disgust. This evolved to pull us away from things that could harm us. But when our emotional needs were dismissed in the past, that disgust can actually turn inward. It becomes shame, that heavy, painful sense that your very feelings are somehow a burden or an inconvenience. Okay, moving into some warmer tones, we have the reactants. Anger gets a bad rap, but it is simply your system drawing a necessary boundary. It's just information. But because so many of us were taught that anger is bad or dangerous, it gets swallowed, we internalize it, or it erupts sideways at someone else later. And surprise, that's just your system registering the unexpected. Now, if you grew up in a really unpredictable environment, surprise doesn't feel delightful, not at all. It feels deeply destabilizing. It turns into this hypervigilance where even a really nice, kind gesture makes you go on high alert, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Finally, we have the time travelers. Anticipation is our forward-facing radar. It's trying to stay one step ahead of pain. But in an anxious system, this becomes constant. You lie awake at 2 a.m. running through conversations that haven't even happened yet. And then there's sadness, the emotion of loss. Because society often tells us to just push past it or get over it, sadness just quietly waits in the body. Unprocessed, it definitely doesn't disappear. It just resurfaces later, almost always disguised as this deep exhaustion or a heaviness you just can't explain. Section 4. Blends and emotional intensity. So here are the secret mechanics of the wheel, because these feelings don't just stay in isolated silos. They actively compound. Plutchik called these combinations dyads. Look at this. Joy plus trust creates love. Anger plus disgust equals contempt. Sadness and disgust become remorse. And here's a real game changer. What we so commonly call anxiety is actually just anticipation plus fear. By seeing anxiety this way, you suddenly have two separate, manageable threads to pull, instead of this one massive, impossible knot. You can look at the forward scanning and the fear completely individually. The wheel also brilliantly maps out emotional scaling. Every single emotion exists on a spectrum of intensity. For example, annoyance, anger, and rage, they are the exact same emotion. They just feel fundamentally different depending on your level of nervous system activation. This makes so much sense, right? It explains why a situation that would normally just cause you mild annoyance can suddenly produce explosive rage if your system is already depleted. And this is exactly why it is so wildly frustrating and utterly useless when someone tells you to just calm down when you're flooded. It's not a character failure that you can't snap out of it. It's a biological reality. When your nervous system hits high activation, your prefrontal cortex, the logical reasoning part of your brain, goes practically offline. It is significantly less accessible. You quite literally cannot logic your way out of a flooded state. Section 5. Interrupting your emotional patterns. So how do we actually apply this theoretical map to your immediate daily reality? Here are the actionable steps. First, you have to name the feeling specifically. Psychologists call this affect labeling. Just shifting your internal monologue from "I feel bad" to "I feel apprehensive" instantly reduces the feeling's power over you. Second, ask yourself what's sitting underneath it. Because an explosive reaction, like anger or a total shutdown, is almost always sitting right on top of a much softer emotion, like fear of being wrong or sadness. And third, track your intensity on a 1 to 10 scale. Honestly, if you're above an 8, reflection isn't even possible yet. You just have to let the biological activation move through your body first. There's this fascinating research from UC Berkeley showing that we have at least 27 distinct categories of emotional experience. Things like awe, nostalgia, craving. But here is the thing. The absence of language for a feeling does not make it any less real. It just makes it incredibly hard to process. And this right here is exactly why your patterns repeat. Your nervous system is just defaulting to a familiar loop because you lack the specific language to process and release the feeling. So you just end up carrying it. I really want to encourage you to start tracing your own recurring loops. The next time you feel a super familiar state wash over you, pause and ask yourself, when did this feeling first come? Because patterns always have histories. And by the way, if you often just feel numb, please remember that numbness is not the absence of emotion. It's actually just suppression. It's your system shutting down to protect you because the feelings are just too much. Just know that underneath that numbness, there is absolutely a feeling waiting for you. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to hold on to this core idea. The surface emotion is real, but it is rarely the whole story. Your immediate reactions, they are incredibly valid. But Plutchik's wheel empowers you to look a little deeper. It gives you the tools to map out that tangled loop, to understand the biology behind it, and to finally figure out what is really driving it. Next time something hits you harder than it should, pause and ask which of the 8 is most present, and which one might be underneath it. That single question can interrupt a loop that might otherwise run for hours. If you want to go deeper, Emote is a private AI space where you can say what you actually feel and start to see the patterns over time. Link in the description. See you next week.